1.6 billion transistors on one microchip. We cannot capture it on one chart anymore. We have to use logarithmic scales. And this technology is changing our world at an increasing rate. And I'm just coming back from a technology conference in Florida, which I attended. It was a Cognizant Community Conference. And what I learned there and heard there is really mind-blowing. But let's talk about some changes. First, you are all familiar with, which is our technology coming here, iPhone. So when I was a kid, I read fairy tales. They talked about magic mirrors. You could talk with people in another place. Today, I have a 15-year-old daughter who's spending quite some time looking in this magic mirror and talking with her from New Jersey with a friend down in San Diego. And she doesn't think there's anything magical at all. And if I dare to say, isn't that amazing? She looks at me and says, Dad, you're not so old. So, but this is just the beginning of a change. For those in the room who are much younger than me, get prepared. Things also going to change for you rapidly. Let me give you one example I learned at the technology conference. There was a professor from the MIT who, and he had some slides he showed them. He said at the end, one of his technology engineering students came to him after graduation and said, I want to build a car that can fly. Isn't that ridiculous? The student just graduated, says, I want to build a car that can fly. You know what he showed up at the MIT 4 years later with? With a car that would fly. So this shows you how the world is changing and the power of the internet. He got, of course, all the information, all the contacts, all the sponsors. He was connected to them. He built the connections. And what we thought was a privilege of large companies like Boeing or the 3 Detroit companies, they had thousands of engineers, huge databases of knowledge to build new technology devices. There was a student, like many of you in this room, who had an idea and said, I'm going to make it happen, and he made it happen. So you can only imagine how the world is going to change in the future. So as technology is progressing, so is biology. Ever imagine just 30 years ago? The human genome has been decoded. The information is sitting in databases, not taking up much space in the database anymore because, well, the database have got so huge and large. We have new sciences called metabolomics, proteomics, that give us insight into the dynamic state of our bodies. It tells us how are we doing. As we speak, the secrets of epigenetics are being unveiled. So that would, of course, not be thinkable without this technological revolution I showed you just before. And technology and biology is merging. I heard a presentation by Greg Venter, you are all familiar with. He is involved in so many different companies and still driving things. So one of the proof of concept, for the interest you heard a proof of concept, he did was linking up the DNA language, the code of biology, to the in silico language, to the digital code. So what he proved, what is possible, that you can take somewhere a virus, you can scan in the DNA code, then you have the computer, based on that code, calculate the protein structure needed to combat that virus, to vaccinate it. So, what is possible? And maybe one day the Ebola crisis will be less scary. What is technology makes possible that a new virus emerges, you scan it in, a computer calculates the vaccine, and the vaccine is printed out literally around the globe on the other side. So, I just wanted to share this article with you, which I just found in the New York Times to give you an idea what's all going on, the promises of biology. Researchers connected the blood of young and old mice. And I wanted to see what happened. So that was an experiment done in the 1950s, and they now repeated it at several institutions. Guess what happened to the old mice that were all of a sudden connected to the bloodstream of young mice? Old mice that had, like many of us who get older, had some arthritis, the heart wasn't any more powerful, the memory, you forgot where you put your car in the parking lot. Guess what happened to the old mice? All of a sudden, when they sacrificed them, they looked at it, arthritis had gone back, the hearts had improved, and so on. So they isolated a substance called GDF11. They injected GDF11 into old mice, put them into mazes, and all of a sudden the mice remembered the way out. So it seems that there is a factor in our blood that declines over the age. But the interesting thing is I want to share with you is the flip side. So if you hear that, so those who are older in this room, don't please go home and try to connect it to your kids and to get rejuvenated. They would like it, because what happened to the younger mice? They got older. They developed arthritis, heart failure, and so on. So it seems that we have a compound in the blood when we get older that is pre-programmed, that gets secreted, that makes us to fall apart sooner. So there's two compounds. So I leave it to your fantasy to think what this finding that was published in the New York Times here, what this may need for the biology in the near future. So talking about this, so what you would expect, of course, that with this rapid evolution technology in biology, we should very, very fast get the main diseases, human diseases like infectious diseases, cancer, and so on under control. There should be thousands new wonderful drugs out there that cure diabetes and so on. Well, let's look at the reality. Nature Review coined the term Erome's law, which is the reverse of Moore's law, for the biotechnological industry, because what they state here, that the number of new drug approvals per billion US dollars is halved every 9 years. It's just the opposite. So when I showed you my first slide, you may remember that Moore's law started in 1971. And this is where the development took off that created our modern world. So what happened also in 1971? In 1971, we had a person who was very hopeful that this was the beginning of changing the ordeal of cancer for mankind. It was President Nixon, who more than 40 years ago declared the war on cancer, 1971. So the expectations were high, but what happened in reality? 20 years later, I myself happened to get cancer. And I can tell you I was not cured by any miraculous drug out there. I was cured by the skills of a very experienced surgeon who removed in an hour-long surgery the tumor and every suspicious lymph node, and followed by radiation therapy. Old stuff. Was even before the war on cancer started. And here I am, cancer is history for me. Again, 20 years later, so we have about spending cancer research about $200 billion in the United States, more than putting a man on the moon. 1.5 million papers have been published, and many people say that millions and millions of mice have been cured of cancer. But what does the reality look for us humans? We still have 1.5 million new cases of cancer in the United States every year, and more than 500,000 people die. Sure, we have made some progress in oncology, but literally at what price? Leonard Saltz, who is head of the GI oncology division at the Sloan Kettering Institute, he said this year that we're paying top dollars for drugs that do very, very little. So there is, for example, a new cancer drug out there, breast cancer drug. There was an uproar in the United Kingdom because this drug is, the yearly cost is about $145,000 for the drug. The pharmaceutical company said that's not right. It's not $145,000, it's less. Why? Because the average survival is only half a year. So patients don't pay $145,000, they pay just half of it. And that's after 40 years of war on cancer. So the question is, what are the reasons for the decline in productivity? So what people are saying, biomedical R&D is increasingly complex. I buy it. However, we have also very, very powerful tools. This is a mainframe in the 90s. This computer helps us to manage complexity. There are higher regulatory hurdles, is true, but okay, the FDA has to watch out for the safety of patients. And then pharmaceutical companies are too big to innovate. That's why so much hope is put on the smaller companies, which are also represented here tonight. However, there's another issue, the main root cause, which I call it. The main root cause is an elephant in the room, scientific institutions, and I have also to say, unfortunately, academia, they don't want to face. This is the elephant in the room, or in the test tube, which is that there's a general lack of reproducibility in biomedical research. There's increasing evidence in the literature, the press writes about it, that our research cannot be reproduced. The Wall Street Journal had, in December 2011, an article titled "Scientists' Elusive Goals Reproducing Study Results." And a quote from that article, "This is one of medicine's dirty secrets. Most results, including those that appear in top-flying journals, can't be reproduced." The journal Science dedicated an issue in 2011 to the topic data replication and reproducibility, and they stated that out of 18 published studies of microarray studies, only 2 could be reproduced. The rest was noise. And very interesting for you, and I really recommend you, when you get in a library, get your hands on it if you don't have it in your institute, the Handbook of Statistics in Clinical Oncology. They have now a chapter in called Forensic Bioinformatics. You know what forensic bioinformatics is? It is a new discipline. It's about how to find out which published results are flawed. They teach how to identify this faulty science. So can you imagine now, we get now another science that is supposed to find out which results of which science are flawed. So Keith Baggerly and Kevin Coombs, they have really made it a mission to uncover this faulty science. And this is the last press last year, 2013. We are here in California. The Economist had an article, Unreliable Research, Trouble in the Lab. Look at the cartoon here. Of 53 studies considered landmark basic scientific studies in oncology, Amgen, my colleague from Amgen is here, Amgen was able to reproduce only 6. And guess what? I think Amgen was right, and not probably the 53 other studies. So we have to face, as a scientific community, an inconvenient truth, which is that non-reproducible research does not create knowledge, it creates only noise. And that is a fact we have to allow to think in. Non-reproducible research is noise. So let me ask you here a few what-if questions. And really I ask you, think big. Take a big, be system thinkers here. So what happens to the world, to all of us, if the recent revelations indicate that a significant portion of published biomedical research is noise? What is a noise-knowledge ratio of the 22 million records in Medline? Is it 30%, 50% noise? And what if the amount of noise in modern biomedical research is beginning to suffocate any productive research we can do at an ever-increasing pace? Where is progress in medicine going? That is true. So let me ask the question, why can't we get it right? So to answer the question, let me step back to the basics of science. Our science today is not anymore the science it used to be in the days of Newton, Galilei, and Kepler, where one man in his home office was able to uncover truly earth-shaking new things, like, for example, which we know today, that the sun is not revolving the earth, but the other way around. Modern science has got much more complex. Modern science is based on collective intelligence. What is collective intelligence? Collective intelligence is that you have an idea, you do your research work, you put it out there, somebody else picks it up, builds on it, and so on and so on. So, and the internet is definitely a great facilitator of collective intelligence. However, collective intelligence has one requirement. It requires, as Michael Nielsen in his fantastic book, Reinventing Discoveries, a new era of network science, wrote in 2012, it requires a shared body of knowledge, methods, techniques, and shared praxis. You need to have a common ground for collective intelligence. You need to have a shared, agreed-upon quality standards, how to plan, conduct, and report scientific work. If you don't have that, you cannot build on each other. You keep on reproducing, trying to reproducing, keep on doing that. So what you need, what is needed for some collective intelligence to work, is a common scientific language to guarantee authenticity, integrity, completeness of scientific data and results. So what's the state of the union in biomedical research? No well-defined quality standard exists in biomedical research. And let me give you some quotes here by Keith Beggerly and Kevin Coombs from MD Anderson, what they found. Genes were mislabeled due to an off by one indexing error. A disconnect between the numbers and the samples names rendered the predictions invalid. Poor documentation allowed errors to go unnoticed until after things had proceeded to clinical trials. And that is unethical. But that is a state of biomedical science. As I said, it's an inconvenient truth. The WHO in 2004, they assembled a group of international scientists to Geneva. About 140 scientists came together to address that issue because the WHO has declared the development of a common quality standard for biomedical research a pressing global need. From the perspective of the WHO, the world's population is facing serious health challenges. And I think after the Ebola scare, no one can deny that. There's an increasing demand for new drugs and new principles for treatment. It's a fact. We have to agree with that. So they conclude further that it is essential that basic scientific biomedical research is conducted in a proper fashion using processes that minimize waste of resources, to reduce the need for costly repetition of work already performed. The WHO takes a truly global perspective. When I visited their office in Geneva, spoke to the authors of that quality practice in biomedical research, it was very impressive and moving what was really driving them. So we are living in the developing world, comes health-wise, in the developed world, on an island of happiness. When you look what's going on in the developing world, the diseases, look at the African continent. There's a reason that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is putting so much research in there. Those countries will never come up if they don't get their health issues under control. And this is where we need our resources. We cannot waste our resources in our academic world repeating from, maybe not from 8 to 5, but from 8 to 6, our experiments go home and then go with a feeling, oh, we have accomplished something. No, if the work is not reproducible, we didn't accomplish anything, we created noise. So a working group at the American Society of Quality, we set out, about 5 years ago, we said, okay, let's set out maybe to make a little dent here and try to begin to change the trend here. So we set out to work on a standard for biomedical research and drug development for what we said then North America. But our thinking is this will hopefully become one day a standard that is taught at universities, a standard that laboratories adhere through everywhere. Why? Because we think that a common quality standard will ensure the validity and credibility of scientific data. And once this is ensured, we have mutual acceptance of research results. If we have a mutual acceptance of research results, collective intelligence kicks in, and we have an increased productivity of biomedical research. So let me quickly, how much time do we have? 5 more minutes. Okay. So let me quickly go through what is the content of this biomedical research standard. Well, it stipulates nothing more or less that a scientific institution needs to have a management system in place. It needs to be properly organized. It needs to have adequate staff, scientific and managerial staff. It needs to have processes and procedures. It needs to have a responsible principal investigator. It needs to have an independent person who verifies quality, a quality manager. It needs to have a quality management system in place. What is a quality management system? Well, a quality management system has many elements, has all the elements that are needed to maintain quality. Standard operating procedures, standard methods, calibration methods, and last not least, validated computer system. How many institutes, and I'm not asking you how many of you do still your scientific work on Excel spreadsheets?